Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl.
Well, hello there, and Merry Christmas coming up to our celebrators of Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays, Bridge.
Welcome to Romance at a Glance. I'm Bridge. This is Shawnee. We are here today with our final author interview of 2020. It's a good one.
Oh, I'm so glad that we saved this for last.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going out on a bang.
Bang.
On a bang, Bridge. On a bang.
What might say we're going out to Pound Town.
Pound Town. You know, Ari is nasty.
Yep.
And I like her. Yep. I am here for you, R.E.
Plus, this is a super special final episode because we also talked to her audio narrator, Shawnee approved, and he gave us the dirty deets on recording ribbons and O's.
Including some baby making.
Hey-o!
And let me tell you, I got some first-hand knowledge of that too. Minus the babies.
But the making, you were trying.
I was trying.
And because he came on the show, R.E.Hargrave is generously giving out 5. That's right, 5 audiobooks for free to our US and UK listeners, and a signed bundle with ribbons and O's and the other BDSM Christmas novella, Brooklyn Blues.
Dang, can I enter?
No, Shawnee, we're hosting the giveaway.
But I want it.
Okay, well, you can't.
Okay, fine. Then I'm gonna need all of y'all out there to enter. You know, this is an interview, not a review. But let me tell you right now, that book is hot. And let me tell you, it is my go-to quickie. It is on my go-to quickie list for the year. And even though it's a Christmas book, I mean, you could read that book all year. You want Christmas in July? You want Christmas at Valentine's Day?
Yes, I do.
Read this book. It'll get you there and lickety-split.
Well, on that note, let's get this interview popping.
Let's get it popping.
Popping. Okay, everybody, we have author R.E.Hargrave with us. You guys, her first name is actually Rachel, so we will be calling her Rachel because she said we could, and it's very exciting. And also, we want to give big props because she was nervous to come on the podcast. How could she be nervous with me and Shawnee? Shawnee, what do you think?
I mean, come on.
Rachel, thank you for being here.
Howdy, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you.
The big thing I want to talk to you about, Rachel, and this is a serious question, is sex at Christmas. Because it took us a long time to find books that had sex at Christmas. They're all like a divorced woman goes back to a small town and has a closed door romance that leads to a baby. Or a woman with a baby whose husband died goes back to a small town and finds love again.
Second chance at love.
Yeah, second chance at love. Oh.
Okay, you're talking about my very first book that was ever released, Sugar and Spice.
Oh, there you go.
That one was because it was a PG. My daughter was 9 at the time. She's 17 now, a senior in high school. But she was an avid reader, and I had the Divine Trilogy coming up. You know, I was working towards publishing on that one, and they wanted the publishing house wanted to do just a quick Christmas anthology, and I had 3 weeks to be able to write something and get it submitted. So it wasn't going to be very long. And I was like, you know what? Before I launch this hardcore BDSM erotica stuff, wouldn't it be nice if my very first book ever released was something that my kids could pick up and read? You know? So I came up with Sugar and Spice. My 9-year-old was actually my first pre-reader on it. She would sit at the laptop and read through it. And, you know, she's got her own signed copy in her room now. But that one was kept very sweet. You know, single mom kind of thing, living in small town South Carolina. Her dad is a landscaper, kind of caretaker out at the retirement home. And because of the situation, all the people in the retirement home have kind of adopted his daughter and therefore her kid as their honorary kid and granddaughter. And so it's just it's all of this very small town family, good feeling, whatever. And, you know, stranger comes to town who happens to be the son of one of the residents at the retirement home, and things go from there. And of course, you know, it ends up kind of going through the seasons, and it ends at Christmas. So I consider it a Christmas book because you get to the big finale ending at the end. But it's that super sweet, you know. Yes, some stuff happens clearly, but it's all fade to black. It's off screen. And then I got the trilogy out there, and then I started getting a little more daring. I got feedback on that. People seem to really like the way I do BDSM. And I did, like I said, I did Brooklyn Blues first. It actually kind of surprised me when you guys reached out for Ribbons and O's, because it hasn't gotten the attention that Brooklyn Blues did. So I'm happy to be giving this one a little more attention. But with Brooklyn Blues, it started my whole striped stocking story.
I love the cover. Yes. The cover is so fun. Honestly, that was one of the reasons I chose it. So to be full disclosure about the kind of reader I am, I will of course read Brooklyn Blues before we do our podcast recording, because I can't just like read one book like a normal human being and then stop. I have to just like consume them all. So I'm sure I will be reading that imminently. But the reason I chose it is I just love the cover. Like, first of all, I wanted a steamy Christmas, because this whole season was about the steam. So I wanted a steamy Christmas.
I think this would fit.
Also, so I loved the description. The reviews were good. There weren't as many, but they were very good. And I just love the cover. I love the stripes. It was just like screaming Christmas, but then he wants to go home to London to his playroom. And I was like, does he? What's going to happen?
There is a sequel started, and that one will come out kind of again in this whole striped stocking story. I use the hashtag for that. The concept on that is as and when I get around to doing them, they're going to be little short stories. They will be holiday themed, and they will be a BDSM. This one will pick up at the sequel will be an Easter one, kind of, spring Easter. I have a couple of Halloween ones that I've started, nice. But, the cover work will have some kind of, the striped stockings on them one way or the other. They won't always be red and white. Obviously, Halloween's probably going to be like purple and black, or, black and white or whatever. The Easter ones will get into pastels and whatnot, but you'll always see those striped legs on the cover somewhere, and you'll know it's holiday, and you'll know it's BDSM.
I have never been a big novella reader before we started this podcast. And since we started a year ago, I've now read a lot of them. And I am finding that it can be a little hit or miss, just like any novel, because sometimes they're a little too short and you're like, oh, I needed a little more meat. And then sometimes you're like, this is a novella, but it's still like 180 pages and I really wanted something a little shorter. And so it's a really tricky balance to have a full narrative where you like connect with the characters and actually care about what's happening, but also like that it's like has enough tension and steam to get to that sweet spot. So how do you balance that? Because spoiler everyone, I liked her book, and
thank you.
I think you did a very good job with that.
For me, a novella usually lands somewhere between 15 and 20,000 words. Okay. I'll have a concept. I'll come up with the concept, and I'll know where I want to get to in the end, maybe, or I'll just have a flash of a scene, and I go, okay, somehow I have to do a story around this. And I'll start laying out characters. I write out a real general summary for myself, which usually ends up getting morphed and evolves into the blurb that'll go up, when it gets published. But that kind of gets me started. I build character profiles, as I'll lay out names and start putting, height, traits, quirks, all that kind of stuff. Their physical descriptions, and that, so that I have that to build on. And then I just start writing. And as I write, I'm a pantser. I'm not a plotter. I let characters just suddenly pop in, from the other room or show up or whatever. And it's like, oh, where'd you come from? Well, okay, come on in. Let's make a spot for you, and they get worked in. Very rarely does a character get mentioned just for the sake of a passing by. Usually if a character talks loud enough to want to be there, they're going to be there, and they're going to be pertinent to the overall story. Like you said, I get a lot that the whole thing about the stories being short, they wish they were longer, but they can't complain that the story's not done. with my novellas, a lot of readers will tell me, I love it. I want more of the world. Can you bring these people back? And I also get a whole lot of, I love your side characters. There's the trilogy. I keep referring back to that because it all told, that was like 260,000 words between the 3 books, and written over a few years. But the journey that you've got the main couple that go through all 3 books, but then there are so many side characters that come in. I've actually got a set of spinoff. When I get around to it, it's going to be a compendium of divine delights or something like that for it. But it's going to be the little side stories for, the side characters. Some of it will be back before the trilogy happened. Some of it will be post-trilogy, for where they've gone, because readers fall in love with the different stories of the other characters. And I'm not sure how I do it, other than they talk to me. They come to me and say, here I am, let me be in the story too, please. And they reveal their personalities. They give it to me, and I put it down on the page.
So you're also an editor.
Yes.
Have you been an editor for your whole career?
I yes and no. Like I mentioned earlier, I got started in the fanfic world, the Twilight fanfic world. The trilogy, everybody knows, the second book in the trilogy was actually To Serve as Divine, the fanfic. And I pulled to publish it, moved that title to the first book, which I wrote, from scratch. And then I also wrote the last book, Surreal, rounding out the story. Of course, as the fanfic, it was, fit. It was Washington. It was Edward Bella, blah, blah, blah. I moved it to Texas. Backstory, my main heroine is Irish. The guys in it, are Texan guys with their lovely Texan drawls. And I completely changed it up. I mean, if it's Twilight fanfic, you can kind of find things and probably go, oh, well, this character was probably this, this person or whatever. But it was so much more than just a name change when I pulled to publish. I recreated the world. I built out the world. When I was in the fanfic world, I was also a go-to beta for people. I would beta read and stuff. It was a learning curve. The way I edited stuff back then for fanfics is not how I edit now. I've obviously learned a whole lot more going through the actual publishing process myself and having editors get their hands on my things. As you interact with people in the indie world, other editors, other writers, you learn as you go. And the longer you're in the world, the more you learn, the better you get. I looked back at some of my old stuff now and I cringe. It was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so. I'd actually have to go back and look and see when I actually started taking editing jobs, for pay. And that I had to be convinced to do. People kept telling me, you need to stop doing this for free, put a bill on it. Even my husband tells me now, you're not charging enough for what you're doing. You need to have more self-worth, whatever. It's like, but the indie world, everybody's tight and we all want to help each other. For what I charge, I have the flexibility of making the authors understand it's probably going to take a month or so, for a full turnaround, but you're going to get a word by word, punctuation by punctuation edit from me. The first 2 passes, I look at every last thing in that manuscript, down to looking for those extra hidden spaces at the end of a paragraph where the writer will, we sit here going along and we'll hit a space thinking we're going to continue on that paragraph, but then we change our mind and we return and go down and start typing again. Well, you've left that little hidden space there, which when it goes to your formatter, could potentially jack up your book. In formatting, it's going to end up putting extra spaces. I go through and try to find those hidden spaces and pull them out for my authors as well. And it's because I enjoy helping shape stories. I'm also a little bit, people tell me I'm a grammar Nazi, and, I get up in my stuff. This lets me be able to read a book and still put my opinion in there and go, well, I would fix this here and here. It makes me a little bit snotty, but.
Well, I feel like somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it, because like one of the problems, so I'm super happy that the barrier to entry for authors, you don't have to go through a publisher anymore. Like anybody can do it. But the flip side of that for me is that the general quality has gone way down. And you get a book that you think is going to be good, and you're just like, what? How did this make it through editing? And this didn't even make it through editing, you know? And
I think you realize that they banged it out and had a friend read it and had the friend go, oh yeah, I love it. It's great. And so then they hit publish. And it's like, oh my God, you skipped so many steps. So you should never think that you could start at the beginning of the month writing a book and it's going to be published by the end of the month. That's not enough time.
No. And it's hard because for me, I'll give an author like 2 chances and then I won't pick up another thing from that author, you know? And I think sometimes that the fact that people are like just trying to get stuff out so fast, sometimes makes it so that they're not actually capturing those first readers or whatnot. And then there's a disconnect to me too from, because I grew up in writing fan fiction as well. And so when you jump from writing fan fiction and serials to writing a book, there's also a disconnect. I'm reading books where I'm like, oh, you definitely were a fan fiction author and you haven't figured out how to, not make your book sound like a fan fiction. And then there's a huge disconnect for me in that as well. And so it's where I'm also like very happy. I'm like, okay, people are making that leap and doing that. I'm also like wanting to encourage everybody to like, hey, get a real editor, somebody who does this professionally to go through.
It's great to have your friends read it and give them feedback, but you need to get some non-biased. You need people that aren't your besties, that, that you're actually paying them to go in and tear your shit apart. And so that you have to piece it back together. You'll usually find that you can make the pieces fit tighter and neater. And, I've made my authors cry with editing and I feel awful, but their end product ends up being so much better. And I've seen my authors actually get awards for their books. And, it's like,
that's love though.
Yeah. Have you found an editor for your own books that you are now sort of sticking with, or have you been trying to find a good fit?
The editor that I fell in love with that did the trilogy for me that I worked with, she doesn't edit anymore. Unfortunately, real world and everything just got to be too much. It was too much pressure, and so she's kind of pulled back. I will be completely honest on the novellas. I self-edit. They're short, they're quick. I go through them. The way I don't just vomit write, I edit write. So, by the time I've got a paragraph down, I've probably reread and redone that paragraph 10 times already. And by the time I hit the end, I go back through and there's probably another 3 passes that I do. I do have with Wanted, because it was a full length, I did pay a proofreader to go in after I had done all my passes. And, she caught a couple of things here and there. And then when I did the arcs, a handful of people came back and said, well, I noticed this or this or this. And I was like, okay, great. Thank you. I pulled the file back up and was able to go in. I'm confident enough in my own writing and by the time that I actually get one out, that another editor probably is not going to find that much more. Like I said, I also don't bang these books out. I take years to write a book. So I've gone back and I've started from the beginning so many times, because anytime I'll get a little pocket of time, I'll be able to work on it for a week or 2. And then, the next editing job will come up, whatever. And so that gets backburnered again. It might be 6 months before I open that thing again. So I'm right back up to the top, starting over. And at that point, I'm a reader to the story, the way I'm concerned, and I can just read straight through, and I'll catch things and I'll make notes and, and then I start reworking it. So
you're in a unique position. I feel like that a lot of other people are not. They're not editors, but what you're talking about like letting a book sit for a long time and then going back is like a thing in music that we call demoitis, which is like when you make a song and then you can't hear anything that's wrong with it. Like you love it. You're like, oh my God, I love it. This is the greatest song I ever did. Right. And then, so you listen to it over and over and over again. You can't hear shit. 6 months later, you put the song away. 6 months later, you pick it up. You're like, oh God. There's a lot of things wrong with this.
Tweak.
Then you can go in with fresh eyes and ears and do it. Yeah. So definitely.
Have you gone back into any of your older things that were already published and like read them again and been like, oh, I'm going to upload a new file into something that's been published? Or do you typically like now you've moved on? Like once you feel like it's good enough to publish, it's good enough to be out there?
At that point, yes. I'm like I said, as long as it's taking me to get stuff up, I tend to I let it slide. Where I have tweaked is the audio version might be a little bit cleaner than the print version, because by the time we've gotten around to doing the audiobook, I go through and I highlight, and which means I'm going through that whole manuscript again, breaking down who needs to do what part. And because of that, I'm back in that manuscript again. And so I will catch things and I'll tweak little things there, so the audio is probably going to be the best version of my books you're going to get. It's going to be the most recent that I've dabbled in.
Okay, you guys, we have a special treat today. We actually have the audiobook narrator, one of the audiobook narrators of Ribbons and O's here with us today. Trevor is here and he's going to give us a breakdown of how it all happened and how he comes up with those dulcet tones that get us all going. Hi, Trevor. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Well, I feel like we should just dive right in. And I really would like to know, Trevor, how do you feel about just a bunch of people getting off to your voice?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I mean, it's fun to create worlds and to take the words, that authors write and the steam that they create on the page and to bring them to life in a sense. The voice is powerful and it moves certain people in ways that causes them to move sometimes. But it just, it's, I don't really think a lot about the other end, I just to get into the character as much as possible and to inhabit what's going on and to communicate, what the author is trying to do. And hopefully that works. And at least for a moment, the listener can lose themselves, literally or figuratively or both. I don't know. however it works. And yeah. So yeah, I haven't thought a lot about, kind of what goes on, behind the scenes, though I, as I've encouraged Rachel and others, I think there's a whole world of romance audio that about behind the scenes of creating it, which another book I recently did with Rachel deals with, as well as on the receiving end. So believe it or not, I was in conversation earlier this week with someone in the film industry who was asking me about just kind of similar dynamics of narrators speaking and receiving and who the primary audience is and what a film would look like about, it was a female character in this case, who's obsessed with audiobooks and the fantasy world they create. So yeah, at some point the media are going to merge, where you have the audio voice and the visual and it's all kind of coming together. Yeah, I think there's some interesting synergy. That was a long answer to a very simple question.
That was a good answer. We like long answers. We are long talkers. We are all for it. Rachel, I'm
Yes.
hearing the sweet, sweet tones of his voice. How did you choose him? How did you find Trevor?
Actually, he reached out to me on one of the first books I'd put up. I got Holly Jackson to do my Divine trilogy, which was my BDSM erotica trilogy. But from there, I started listing my short novellas up. And I had put up Unchained Melody, which is another novella, but it's a Air Force fighter pilot who has kind of a one-night stand before he's shipped off, and he spends the next 10 years reliving that one-night stand and wondering what if and, whatnot. I think I had the audition up for like 6 months or so, and I nothing was right. every audition I got, it was like people were either too rushed or it was just too over the top or whatever. And then I got this audition from La Petite Mort, and it was perfect except for being just a little bit fast. And so I'd replied back, I'm like, you know what, I think this is going to work, but could you slow it down just a little bit? This guy's a Texan. I need a little more drawl on him. And I remember him laughing, going, actually, I'm from Oklahoma, and I try to speed up because it's more natural for me to go slow. So he tweaked it. And I remember you tried at that point to sell Jess, as a partner. And I wasn't sure because I was still just real new in the audio world. And I was worried about taking advantage of having, two of you on the bill for kind of 2-for-1 sort of thing. And so I pushed back and said, no, and so it was just Trevor, Tor, La Petite Mort. You got so many names that did Unchained Melody. But I think at that point, it kind of started our relationship. And so when I put up, I think we did Firelust next, or did we do Brooklyn next?
Not sure the exact order, but it sounds right. Well, you pick one and I'll go with it.
One or the other. But from there, and then on the next one, it was like, okay, I'm a little more comfortable. We got really good feedback. I was amazed with what he did with Unchained Melody and how he, brought that one to life. And so when I put the next one up, again, Firelust I put out for Firelust came after, because Brooklyn Blues we had hit bestseller in erotica. And I remember in the audition kind of blurb, going, okay, you want to help me get to my next bestseller thing. Right. I want to say you hopped in and just went ahead and said, hey, I noticed you got that up, can we have the job? And it was like, if you guys are willing and you have the time, absolutely. I'd love to work with you again. And so it's just kind of fallen through. We've now done Unchained Melody, Brooklyn Blues, which, like I said, did hit erotica bestseller at Audible. And then we did Firelust. And then once Ribbons and O's came out, we did this one. And this one, it was actually a little bit of a challenge because as you listen to it, the hero in this is English. So, he had to bring out his British accent. So that's 4 novellas. And then, as he hinted at earlier, I think while we were working on Firelust, he was like, you know what, it would be really crazy, or really, have you thought about doing a book where one of the main characters is an audiobook narrator? And that just kind of it planted the seed, it lit the spark, whatever. Because there aren't a whole lot of stories that we've been able to come across where you've got a story about an actual narrator. It took me 3 years to write the thing. But once I got it done, I, of course, reached out and was like, this is your guys' fault that this book is even written. So you get first dibs at the narrating project of it if you're willing to take it on and, work it in. We've got it done. It is sitting over in ACX in their review queue now. So we don't know when it's going to be released because ACX has gotten a little slower with that. But kind of the irony on this is Wanted is my first full-length novel since the trilogy. I've just had time to get short stories out between then. So this has been 3 years or 3-4 years since a full-length book. And where I normally do erotica, Wanted is not erotica. It's about an erotic narrator. But, then some language. The sex scenes are more just kind of fade to black in this one. They don't go into the detail that all of my other books do. It's a lot more of a calmer book in comparison to what I usually do, what we've usually done. But it's been a blast. Trevor and his wife are amazing. The two of them play off of each other really well, and you can hear it in the books they do together. So
yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, so Rachel's literally been with us, I think, from the beginning, and I'm getting near 180. I may get close to 190 total books finished before the end of the year. But that there's been an evolution, even on the production side. And so, when you do a duet, there are different ways to do a duet, and so. Your listeners may or may not know there's just the single narrator, and then there's and you're doing all the parts, male, female, everything. Then there's dual narration where you have the shifting points of view from chapter to chapter, and then there's duet where or you could even have multicast from duet, right? Which that happens too. I recently was in a book where I was a Russian dwarf with a Snow White character and a whole host of others, and everyone had a different part. But
fun.
So you can do an in-person duet, and that can be done with one mic, where one person reads it all, and then the other person comes back in and splices their lines in. And so you just have to kind of monitor volume levels and things. This is the technical aspects of it, Or best practice is to actually get everybody in the same room, and they have different mics, and so you can cue it.
A little harder nowadays.
It is. So, but actually, from the early from Brooklyn and Firelust to Wanted is actually one of the first books that we fully produced with two mics in a newly built purpose studio. So the studio itself has evolved. So in this particular case, we were in a soundproof studio, treated space with a noise canceling. Actually, there's a company called Audimute, which makes blankets that are designed to absorb all the noise. And so that separated us. And then I had a mic and she had a mic, and we just kind of went to town. So
our engineer really wants us to get the blankets for the walls, and I was like, aesthetically, I just don't feel right about having blankets in my office, so let's find another solution. And she's like, let's just get the blankets, and I was like, I want to see a cost breakdown of all the options before I commit to blankets on my walls. But if I had a separate
really thick
studio,
rugs,
if I had a separate studio, it would be fine.
It's the acoustics of sounds, and so what we've actually done in that space is it's a square, but you can actually sound boxy in a square, and so there's blankets actually running at angles to create odd spaces so the sound dies, and it's
Shawnee's in heaven. Shawnee comes from an audiobook background and is a music producer and singer and all this other stuff. So
he's talking sexy right now. He's like,
talking sexy.
We added curves.
I know.
Everything's not at the same level. It's not bouncing off the walls. I mean, that's sexy talk right there.
Yeah, it's just you want to create that space that it's not completely dead, because then it sounds unnatural, but you don't want all the reverberation and all of that. So, but no, literally with Rachel, we've from the beginning to now, there's been an evolution of the production space, the microphones that have been used, all of it. So
what I'm hearing is that you need Rachel to write a new erotic novella so that you guys can read it to each other at the same time in the same room.
Yeah.
As part of your marriage.
So I will actually share something here that it wasn't with Rachel's, but with another book. We were narrating a scene, and that transitioned in the studio.
Yes.
And there are two human beings on this earth as a result of that. Which we have 2-year-old twins now, so you can kind of
do the job.
That's the best.
I'm just gonna say to you. So I'm actually curious too how you started with ACX and stuff. But my partner and I, when we first started to do audiobooks many years ago, it was the same way. I actually heard a really bad recording on Audible, and I was like, "How did this get there?" And that's how I found ACX. And I was like, "Okay, well, we produce music. We can do this, you know." So that's kind of how we started initially. And we were reading all these dirty books, and I was like, this is wonderful for our sex life. Like, this is amazing.
Oh, for sure. No, I mean, anywhere that's one of the fun things about, reading romance and reading erotica is that things that you may have never considered, you all of a sudden find yourself in a character who's inhabiting, something. And so, and the other thing too, is that, I tell people all the time, the body doesn't lie. And so, whereas, in the real world, I'm never going to try that. I don't even know, when you're in the character, your body will or will not respond. And I'll let you kind of fill in the blanks of all of that. But you learn, what are kind of those deep seated desires and needs that are kind of at the core of your being. And otherwise I would have never learned things about myself, frankly. So.
That's awesome. So what did actually bring you to ACX or start like the whole journey of being a narrator and make you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll give kind of the short version of this. I was actually a college professor, believe it or not, at one point in life. And I still work broadly in the publishing industry, apart from narration. People said I had a nice voice, whatever. And the actual tipping point for me was I would go to this place to buy tacos every Tuesday. And when I got to the window to pay for Taco Tuesday, there would always be this gaggle of women at the window. And I thought, wow, this is like, for a long time, I honestly thought this is really poor management, because they do not need that many people at the window to service, what's going on here. And then one day they forgot to flip the mic off, and I heard the girl yell out, "It's the guy with the voice." No, I'm serious. And so at that point I thought, okay, wait a minute. Maybe there's some money to be made here. So I started off auditioning for voiceover work. And I did some political commercials, and then I kind of got, hey, there's a lot of I remember the first thing I ever actually recorded that was in the romance genre was the library scene from the movie Atonement. And I had no idea how you got into audiobook recording or any of that. No clue at all. And I just started posting stuff on YouTube. And I don't know how people found it or whatever, but then someone finally messaged me and said, hey, you need to go to ACX. And it kind of started from there. And then I still work through ACX, obviously. Also work with a lot of different publishers and producers now, but that's kind of the short version of how it got. So
the last couple of years, you've just taken off. It's been amazing watching.
Work with lots of different people, and just pretty busy, and it's been fun.
With ACX,
you had a couple of awards last year too, didn't you?
Oh, did you?
I think so.
I did. I got a Sovas award, and I was an Audi finalist, believe it or not. So yeah, it's things are turning out. And so, and actually, I produce audiobooks as well in a totally different genre. But a book that I produced is a finalist for a Sovas award this year, and maybe for an Audi too. We'll see. So
awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Nice. So was there a learning curve for you to figure out how to record yourself and the studio and all of that?
I mean, so I had, I was a nerd's nerd. I mean, I was a college professor, and I had zero training. And this is embarrassing. But originally we bought it was one of these Yeti Blue podcasts, the audio, you bend your lips, you're like, oh my child. But it's all we knew, and it's all we had. And then, and that's progressed. And now we use Neumann mics, TLM 103, both of us. And so, you kind of learn, and you learn, about and you learn about software and how to position the mic for breathing and acoustics. And it's been just a straight, learning curve. And along the way, I've had in the industry say, okay, there's something you're not doing, you need to do. And some of it, are things that the average listener probably would never even figure out. But I can go back now and listen, and I can hear like what was going on behind the scenes in June of like 2018. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as transitions were happening. And so, yeah, it's been good. And constructive criticism has been the best key. Constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism. Well, I think it's always best. And I used to coach people how to start their YouTube channels and things like that. And people always be like, do I need to buy the most fanciest camera? Do I need to buy and I'm like, no, whatever you have right now, start with that. If you have an iPhone, then
start.
Just start with that. And Bridget and I know how little you need to actually do a good job, doing something. So like the fact that you just started, and you learn as you go. I mean, I feel like that's true for every field.
Especially because like you don't want to invest all this money and then like 6 months later be like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's better when you're like, wait, I love this. This is great. I'm starting to make money. I'm starting to get more clients. Okay, let me get a better mic. Okay, let me build a whole home studio. Yeah. Like that's a way better life plan.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly, you start off and we bought folding closet doors and made a circle and kind of like, stuck and nailed, things to and put something over the top. And now it's like, and now we have this triple wall bulletproof, studio with, I mean, you can get sound into it, but you have to have a foghorn at the door at this point, and so that.
Well, you got 2-year-old twins. Those are foghorns. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Let me tell you, they can get through any sound barrier.
It's true. It's true. But no, I mean, I think your advice is exactly right. There are things I would tell beginning narrators that I just didn't know, but I didn't know where to go to learn the things I didn't know. You know what I mean? It's just
you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the questions to ask. You don't know. And I do know what you mean about like looking back at things or because I deal in audio. Every time I listen to an audiobook, my brain is in the like. Sometimes it takes me a minute to get into the book because I just hear all the audio things. A book we just read, they had a lot of what do you call it?
Mouth noise?
Not mouth noise, but explosives. Like so all the P's, everything was hitting the microphone as I'm listening to the book, and I was just like, oh, like I just need
to back it up just a little bit.
Like I need you to back it up, get that.
I don't know what other authors do when I get the chapters and I go through. I sit there with a notebook. I mean, you've seen Tor has seen the notes that I send back. I will send back, the timestamp on where I heard an extra click or something, or it repeats, or I didn't quite like the delivery of the line wasn't as strong enough or whatever. The last one we're doing, there's one particular line that she delivered it just a little calmer than it needed to be for what the scene was. And it was like, let's ramp this up and just kind of make this phrase one word because it's a blah. And they fix it. But I target the exact spot and I send them the list and then they go back in. But like he said, from Unchained Melody to Wanted, the number of stuff that I've had to send back the list has dwindled way down. You guys are sending me almost perfect things now. It's like,
it's probably also, I would imagine, like getting familiar with your writing style and like the way, like now that you've done multiple books, I would imagine you're kind of like, oh, I already kind of know what vibe she's going to want for this. I already know what things like are important. Also, Rachel, I just want to say that's really important. And I'm very happy that you do that because Shawnee is exclusively an audio listener, exclusively. Does not read a book for this podcast. Only audio. I do all the reading, like of physical books. And they have been a couple books from like big traditional publishing houses, not indie authors who have to like figure out how to do it on their own, but like big publishers. And Shawnee's like, well, I didn't like that character because he was a big bro. And I was like, what book did you read? Did we read the wrong book? And it is really astonishing. Like when those authors are like, oh, I don't even listen to my audiobook. And I'm like, what? You gotta at least listen and see what they're saying.
I don't know if other authors do this. I send them a highlighted, color-coded by character. I highlight when we're changing who's got the narrative, because if it's the male's character or is in that point of view for that chapter, he'll do the narrative, but she'll still come in with the lines that are the females. And then, when it flips to the female's point of view, Jess will do the narrative where Tor is just dropping in with the male lines. I try to, at the top, give a brief summary of the main characters, kind of their age, their personality. I spell it all out.
That's awesome. I like people who make everything easy for me. Just tell me what you want me to do. That's also probably
the editor in me too. I'm just very, I like stuff to come to me for editing a manuscript in certain formatting, whatever, so I can speed through it. I just figure if you want your end product to be the best it could be, you've got to put your time in on your product as well. You don't just count on the other people on your team. Everybody works together to get it out there.
Yeah. Tor, how long does it take you to actually prepare for the character before you start recording?
It really depends upon the character. If there's a lot of, like, say, Russian names or something, I mean, it's going to take you a lot of time to prepare. I usually try to reach out to authors, and the responses you get are so varied when you reach out and say, hey, do you have any notes or anything? And sometimes mini book about the character and the motivation far beyond the page. And then other times, again, depending upon the author, they'll say things like, I wrote that like 8 years ago, and I just never got it into audio, and just, do whatever, you think sounds good. And you're like, okay. And then you just kind of, you just kind of roll at that point. Every author is so very different.
Do you read the book first and then go back and do you read the book cover to cover first and then go back and record?
Yeah. So I do a kind of quick skim read to get a sense, particularly if you're doing a dual narration where there's, let's say a female or another male, whatever it is, that's in another place, to kind of figure out, okay, how much am I really responsible for in terms of number of words, to divide it all out. And then in the process of that, I've developed a kind of list of words that I search the PDF for that help me get clues about voice and motivation. And you can kind of zero in then on characters. And so that's kind of the rough, this is what I need. And so then when I go back through it and read it a little more slowly before I narrate, then, you can have a sense like, okay, this is coming here and that's going to happen. And you can kind of get a nuance for that. The thing where I'm divided, and narrators are a little bit divided, the rule of thumb is that you always read through and you do all the prep and have everything ready to go. I've found, though, that if I know the book is going to have a twist, and I just kind of know that going in, and I don't exactly know what the twist is, sometimes I'll do those steps, and then I'll choose not to read every single line. And I know that's like for, bad form or whatever, but I've actually experienced that the surprise comes out in my narration. Like I'm living it the first time as it's coming out of, there's something to that. So sometimes narrators talk a lot about, you can only act so much, right? And so that you try to find ways, whether it's moving your hands or being genuinely surprised or allowing yourself to kind of really get into emotions. But anything that you can do to really kind of pull out the genuine humanness makes it more genuine and less acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I find what you just said, you nailed this one thing that I talk about, which is you just said move your hands. So when you're, and so I did this narrating, but I do this a lot singing. So when I'm making songs and I need an emotion or whatever, my whole body, I'm behind the camera, just my whole body just into whatever is happening, because you can't sing something, but your body's not feeling sometimes. There's a disconnect. So you're trying to get yourself into that mode. So I know what you're talking about, of just trying to like throw something of yourself into what you're doing.
When actually in my process of narrating, and I'm still learning every day and learn from others, but I got to a place where I was moving more, and then I had chair problems.
That's me.
Right, because then your chair is making noise.
Shawnee calls me Fidget Bridget. I don't know if you can see how still I'm sitting right now. This is just for Shawnee.
I'll tell you how I was following some other narrators, and I ended up buying a really expensive drummer's stool. And drummers, they can move, but they can't. All of that movement can't get picked up or overcrowd what they're doing. And so I now have, it kind of moves with me a little bit, the drummer's stool.
You got a throne.
Yeah, you do. And you can kind of let it roll and do what it needs to do. And, And
it's not a unitasker because you can pull it out for Rock Band, right?
Good to go. Good to go.
Awesome.
Well, Trevor, tell the people how they can find you, and how, if we have any authors listening, if you need audiobooks, how they can find you, or anyone who might be interested in connecting.
Sure. I'm really easy to find. My email address is simply torthomnarrator@gmail.com. Tor, not Thor. Though if you call me Thor by accident, I won't be upset. And then my persona as Tor has a dedicated Facebook page as a person. And so in addition to myself, and then there's also a professional page, Tor Thom Narrator. And then you can search Audible and find me. I'm also on Twitter. Have a pretty solid following there on Twitter, and as well as Instagram. Tor Thom is on Instagram too. And so I post little clips there, sometimes little snippets of me in the studio. I'm excited. Twitter recently added, or at least I know they're slowly rolling it out, but they're letting people just voice things now on Twitter. And so you can just talk and just listen, which is like narrator gold.
Hello. Right? Yes. Yeah. Podcaster too. I'm like, I like this. I don't have to be on camera.
So I've not tested the limits or the bandwidth, but that is an option now.
Cool.
So also, what is Le Petit Mort?
Yeah. So I have a number of different names. So when I started, La Petite Mort is French for the little death, which is a French phrase for a female orgasm. And so I initially went under that name, and then this is crazy, Facebook, right? I created all the social media for that, and Facebook killed it because it wasn't a real person. And so no, I'm serious. Like they thought this is a made up name, this is bogus, whatever. Yeah. And so I created Tor Thom, and as passing as human-esque, I don't know. And it's I've never had any problems. So that's the evolution away from La Petite Mort was literally Facebook taking down my stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of like, those of us that were in the fanfic world and went by fanfic names, Facebook is like, nope, you're fake. Right. No, I'm not. I just would really not rather have my real name out there when I'm writing this kind of fanfic.
Yep.
I'm
available. I answer messages pretty regularly. So yeah, reach out to me. Happy to have conversations.
Nice.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was so fun to listen and learn a little bit more, and for our listeners to learn a little bit more about how it all goes down. And that, like we suspected, you guys, erotic stories lead to erotic sex, which lead to cute little babies.
Cute little babies.
Cute little babies.
It really happens. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody. And enjoy the rest of your time.
Thanks, Tor.
Oh, gosh, that was so fun to be able to dip into that. I quickly want to change vein, though, and ask you about BDSM Writers Con, because this is the first time I'm hearing about it, and I'm intrigued. Yes. I like that the award is called the Golden Flogger. And I would like to know more. Tell me all the things.
Well, actually, I think they've kind of shut down the last couple of years. Dr. Charlie, who was overseeing that, I believe she got breast cancer and just had to pull back. She couldn't put into it as much. When they were at the height of their stuff, they were actually doing conventions and all this stuff. I've never gone to one. Somebody, and I to this day, I do not know who nominated Surreal, which was the third book in the trilogy. That's how I even found out about BDSM Writers Con, is because, like I said, Surreal got nominated in the advanced BDSM category. And I ended up being a finalist in 2015, I think it was, for that one. Then 2017 Brooklyn Blues was also a finalist in the novella category. That one, I have to own up. You pay a fee to get your book thrown into the pool to be looked at. After that, it's all on them. It's not one of those things where they have, you don't come out onto Facebook or social media or whatever going, my book's up for this award. I need your vote. I need your vote. Please go vote. Please go vote. Go vote for me. This is, once it's in there, it is handed over to their panel. And they've got, lifestylers and readers and editors and stuff that go through. They all read the book and then they all cast their votes. It's not up to the author trying to beg for the votes to get the book the award. And I like that about it. And in the meantime, you have like a month and a half or whatever lead up of kind of promotion coming with it, because as they're getting down to where they're going to be showing their short list and then their winners, they of course have your books and interviews and stuff up on their website. So it's like there's promotion that comes with being nominated in the thing, which is why I went ahead and I put Brooklyn Blues in. I didn't do it with Ribbons and O's because money was a lot tighter that year that one came out. And Ribbons was also the last BDSM one that I have finished to date. Like I said, I've got a few more Striped Stocking stories in the works. And there will eventually be more. There will be more to the trilogy down the line because I want to follow up on all the side characters, either backgrounds or foregrounds.
So, okay. I mean, I'm a kinky broad. We just, if you didn't know. And so I want to know, like, how does one start getting into BDSM writing? So how did you, what made you go, you know what? I'm going to do some BDSM books. Like, what was the spark that made you go in that direction?
Okay. Going back to fanfic once again, I had stumbled into the world of fanfic and started reading. And I think the first one I read was it was 58 Nights or something. It wasn't on the XXX level at all. It was, kind of PG-13, maybe R, but it wasn't the in your face that we all know fanfic can be. And I started reading. It was like, well, this was cool. What else is there? And I looked a little more and I found some racier ones, and then, some more that were even more risque and stuff. And I was like, well, I wonder if I could find this. And I just started having ideas because on my personal life, BDSM exists. We don't go out in the community and we're not out there in your face with it, but my husband and I are practitioners, and have been. So we have that from the inside. I understand having the relationship, having the kids, and having it be about more than just the physical aspects of it, which you have to have the mental aspects for BDSM to really work. You got to understand that there's so much more to it. Anyways, started looking for the racier stuff that was more BDSM focused. And there wasn't that much at the time, because I started my very first chapter went up in October of 2010. So it's been 10 years now that I've been writing it. It was either that or the ones that I did come across did not portray BDSM correctly. And made it look more like the abusive setup, and the lack of consent. And I went, you know what? I'm not finding what I want. Screw it. I'm going to write what I want to read. And I, dove into the lake, and I'm still out here swimming.
That I think is awesome. One thing we've talked about on the podcast a lot are that we worry that people don't include in their books that include BDSM is the very like specific consent up front of like what's going to happen, what's allowed, and like really spelling it out, and like how that isn't necessarily like if I went and I'm not in a kink relationship and went and met someone, I might just be like whispering some dirty talk in someone's ear. But if this is a kink situation, like I have to be like, it's not even that sexy at that point because it's pretty removed and it's a little bit more logical at that point. And then the other thing, which your book did really well, is the aftercare, which Shawnee has been like telling me about, how like you go through like such intense emotions and then the afterward is just as important, making sure the person feels like safe and that they know that you're like pleased with them and pleased with how it went. And I think,
like I said, it's not just physical. There's a whole lot of mental. It's not the wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, out the door. If you've had a really good session, there's probably going to be some sub drop, and with that can come crying that you don't know where. It's not tears of anguish or whatever. It's just your body is actually just releasing, and it's releasing everywhere, and it includes your emotions. It just, you slump, you might need to be curled up in a blanket and sleep for the next 5 hours. You might jump up and go, okay, I am starving, feed me. It kind of depends on how intense the session was and where you're at and how your connection with your partner or partners. Ribbons and O's are just one. If you go dip into the trilogy, one of my marketing lines for that one is it's something along the lines of discover the all the kinks you didn't even know you had, kind of thing, because I dip into, we've got female, we got male, we've got groups of people, we've got even where the main couple are devoted to each other, they bring other play partners in at times, but things are spelled out. Everybody knows, what the limits are, and you test different things. Yeah. In that one, the trilogy specifically, and this is going to be the first time I'm going, on record saying this. The trilogy was kind of my pushback at 50.
Yeah.
It needed pushback. It needed pushback.
Also, did you also feel like I did, which was you obviously were reading a lot prior to 50 Shades coming out. I was as well. And I had heard from a lot of people that it was like the kinkiest thing ever. Blah, 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 blah. So I was like, but I also had heard it was not very well written. So I was not excited to read it. So I was like, well, that'll distract me. So one of my friends had bought the series and she's like, well, you love reading here. Just have them. I'm already done. I was like, fine, I'll read it. And she had told me like, she thought it was so exciting and so scandalous, blah, blah. And I was like, you must be reading some vanilla ass shit because this book is not that kinky. First of all, they don't actually have a dom sub relationship. She never agrees to it. Yeah. And she like quote unquote saves him from something that you don't need saving from necessarily. Although his character, I don't know, had a lot of issues on the page, but, I really think that one should have been marketed more as a dark romance. He handcuffs her for like 5 seconds. Yeah. Like, that's it. I'm like, they don't get into he has this whole room and they do almost nothing in it. I'm like, what's the point of the room? Take me in the room, people.
I mean, I think you're right. It should have been marketed more as a dark romance, for sure. And then also the way it wrapped up in the end is like, so like they get married, but they never really discuss the whole kinky shit of what's going to happen with that. It's just like, I can't live without you. Let's get married. And they do, And
he's like, you want to come into the room? And I'm like, and do what? Because what did we agree upon? What's the safe word?
Yeah. What exactly is going to come out? Mine, the main character, she actually got into BDSM in a consensual way. It went from there to the next person she was with wasn't a proper dom who actually abused her for a while. And so you do get some flashback scenes that get really graphic and they're actually kind of awful. And if people want to skip over the flashback, you can still understand the story and the character and everything without having to read the graphic flashbacks. But I was also just trying to get across the point of how dangerous it can be to get in with somebody that thinks that because they're calling themselves a dominant, they can just hit you and do whatever to you or with you or, share you around or whatever. She gets out of that. She's finally escaped from that. And she's trying to live a normal life. But as most submissives are, submissives find, it's not a choice. It's something that's inside you when you want to submit to somebody, and you can only go so long without needing to find somebody to submit to. But after having gone through the abusive situation, she's scared of what's going to happen if she reaches out to that world again. So she has to build up to it. And the I love yous do not happen in the first book. There are no I love yous. It's them building up just a partnership of dom and sub and learning to trust each other. The second book is about them both coming to terms with they have fallen in love with each other, and him being the person that had multiple subs that didn't think he would ever actually fall in love or want to get married or have a family or anything. He'd always thought he would just, be this top
spanking folk, spanking folk. That's what he thought.
But between the two of them, they come around. She's fallen in love, but she knows that one of the things that was laid out at the beginning that was, this isn't anything more than a play partnership, so she tries to hide her feelings because she doesn't want to lose him, so you get the kind of the romance angle from that as it builds and builds. And like I said, it's not even until much later in the second book that you finally get that first I love you out of these two. And then the third book is about kind of where it goes from there. The third book covers like 3.5 years as they move forward and finally get married, and all that stuff.
I think that's very important to add into the book, because I go to a couple support groups. One is a BDSM kink support group. One's a polyam support group. And I was lucky because, when I got into kink, it was not very long ago. I think I'm just pressing a year and a half or something. And I went to classes. I found BDSM 101 classes and I started going. So I got to hear very early on how to protect yourself in the process. Mm-hmm. But in the support groups, I meet a lot of people who did not go that route. And so their first tops or D-types were not true DOMs and did all sorts of, crazy stuff. And because they were a sub, they thought they were supposed to go with it. They thought that was what was supposed to happen because they didn't have enough information. Right. And so that's why that makes me happy to hear that in the books, so that people understand that happens more often than you think. And what isn't.
The sub actually has the power. We get the right to call the quits, but the top can also safe word. There is top drop, mm-hmm. It's not just subs that drop it, tops can realize that it just got too intense, and they'll have to step back because their sub might be pushing more than they want. The sub's going, give me more, give me more, give me more. And the top's not wanting to go. I think, and that's part of why it's also so important, to get into your negotiations and stuff before you start the scene, because once the chemicals and the hormones and stuff start shifting, it is akin to being high on drugs or being drunk or whatever, and your decision-making abilities kind of go in the trash.
Tony talks about that all the time. She's like, you can convince me to do anything.
Yeah. There's a limit where it switches. And I was like, things I would have said absolutely not to. I'm like, yes, we can do that.
You're just floating along going, yeah, sure. It's like, but no, that you're counting on your dominant to
respect your
respect that
boundaries.
And not take advantage. And, that's why you don't play when there's drinking. You don't play when there's drugs. Everybody needs to be sober. Everybody needs to be hydrated and fed. You have first aid kits on hand. You have scissors on hand if you're messing with rope or binding or whatever. You have ways to do quick, well, they could be play as well. That face expression there, Shawnee, was great. But, you also have to be aware that at any minute, the whole thing needs to shut down. And then there's going to be the emotional repercussions that are going to come from that. Yeah. Bad hangover could be there, or, you have a great night and you sleep for the next 12 hours.
Can I ask you, because you have children, and I always, so Shawnee doesn't have children, I do. And I always wonder, because like as a parent, like I can't just like shut down and nap for 5 hours. Just like everybody needs to eat. My kids are really little too. They're 3 and 1. So like everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs help going to the bathroom. Like, I can't just like leave them alone. Or like, I can't just like, let's say we're playing at night. I can't just like wake up late. You know what I mean? Because I have to sleep and my body like needs it. So I'm wondering how that transition from like being a single person, but still playing and being in the community, like not in the community in the sense of like you go to other people, but like being with your husband, and how you kind of balanced that. Or maybe it's getting easier as your kids got older because you just have more time. They can take care of themselves.
There's a whole lot of that. I've been home, I write and I edit from home. My husband has a position where a lot of the time he can work from home. Prior to the shutdown, he would travel. He would be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And my mom would watch the kids, and I'd go join him for a weekend. And so, we'd have a weekend away, or you find the time, you realize, oh, hey, we've managed to set up sleepovers for all of them. We've got the house to ourselves,
Get the snacks. You get the water bottles. I'll get the scissors.
Get the tarps. The towels.
Get the tarps.
It just, sometimes it might be 6 months, or a year before you can get in a really good scene or a really good weekend. You have to bide your time. And, you work for it. It's like any other part of your relationship. You talk it out, you communicate, I feel like sometimes you have to schedule it in.
I feel like that 6 months could be really titillating though, where you're just like bouncing ideas. The day that we do have it open, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this. And I feel like that like mental anticipation could be a real fun exercise.
Yeah, there's a lot of, night whispering where we kind of build these fantasy worlds. And I won't deny that some of those haven't found their way into my books.
Yeah.
There's inspiration.
Rachel, you so kinky, Rachel. So when you're, I'm like, we gotta talk about books. What's your favorite part when you're writing the book? What's your favorite part to write? And then as you're building your characters also, like, where are you really pulling all of your inspiration from? What gets your mind going?
Oh gosh, I whenever I get asked the inspiration question, it's literally, it could be anything. Going back to surreal, I've mentioned I'm a pantser, not a plotter. Surreal was taking me forever to finish, and I'd had the first 2 books were already out. I had thought I was going to get the 3rd book out a little bit faster. So here I had the readers going, hey, when's 3rd book going to come? Are we going to get this 3rd book? Are you going to finish? And it's like, yeah, I'm working on it. There were certain things that I knew I wanted in the book, and with the way the book was going, I finally hit a point where I had to have a timeline and fit a timeline for the things to fall into place where they did. So about halfway through Surreal, I finally said, screw it. I sat down, I pulled out a calendar and stuff. And I went, okay, well, for this to happen here, things have to happen here. And I kind of started plotting the rest of Surreal. One part I knew that he was going to take her to Japan to meet a mentor that he had met as a younger man that had helped him get into the shibari and stuff. While he wasn't the shibari expert, he wanted to take her to the shibari expert. And it's like, okay, well, I have them coming to Japan. And we were watching, it may have been KRA, it may have been Food Network. It was something where they were doing a thing on ramen, and they went to Japan, and there's this one place where the chef there, he calls himself Elvis. The place is decorated, with all Elvis things. And he's very insistent that there is no talking in his restaurant. And it's the kind of thing that his food is so good and so sought after that you get there, you get your little token, whatever, to wait your turn for a table to open. It doesn't matter if there's 5 in your party. If a seat opens, the next person in line goes in. So you're not necessarily going to get into this little ramen shop and all sit together. And you're certainly not, if you go in there and start talking or chatting while you're eating, the chef will yell at you. He will call out and, tell you to shut up in his shop, whatever. And I'm like, what a perfect setup to have, a remote toy situation. Ooh. Because there can't be any discussion. They're probably not going to be sitting together when they go in there to eat. And I'm like, I've just got what I needed to get my Japan chapter going. And that part of the book finally came together for me. And I had been sitting there for like 2 months at that point. I hadn't written on the book. And because I saw this cooking special about this one restaurant.
That sounds great.
I
need to, when we're allowed to go back in restaurants one day in the future, post-corona, that is definitely an exercise I will be trying on date night. I will.
Food and sex mix somehow. I am for it every time.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then you need to read The Food Critic.
All your serotonin levels are just like pee.
Ooh, The Food Critic.
Yeah, that one is not in audio yet. That's like one of the few books I have mine that I've not had put into audio yet. It's pretty much one long scene between a food critic and a chef in the kitchen.
Ooh,
but yeah, that whole aspect of not only would they not be able to talk or whatever, just the no noise, and so he was able to play with her.
Any sort of restriction is so. I was telling Shawnee before we started this, we were just talking about other things, but I was like, I am not a sub. I don't know if you could tell just from talking to me, but it's just not my natural proclivity. And I think probably dependent on your dom and what the scene is and what the situation is. I'm sure there are aspects of it that I would like, but what you're describing, that restriction of there's like some sort of like, oh, well, we're in a restaurant where you can't talk, but I'm going to torture you. Like that, I'm right. Like, well, that I can get behind.
You're out in public, so you need to keep your face,
Yeah, that I can get behind.
Poker face, and you can't do the Meg Ryan Sleepless in Seattle thing.
Yeah.
It was just, but yeah, like I said, just out of nowhere watching, it popped up on the TV, and I'm like, I've got it. I know what I need to do. And so, I had them visit this restaurant as part of their going to Japan. And so inspiration can strike from anywhere at any time. You never know.
I'm glad. I'm glad it's striking you, Rachel.
I go, nice heavy flogger.
Shawnee went to a kink convention, I guess it was, right, Shawnee? Where they were like demonstrating of everything?
Oh, no. So they have a thing called Club Awakening, which is like a beginner play party. It's for beginners. So we were in our 101 classes. They throw this beginner party. So nothing crazy happens there, but they teach you how to flog. They teach you how to and they call them tasting booths. So you can go somewhere to figure out how to do slapping and cupping and shibari and all those types of things. And,
so Shawnee's there. Shawnee's there with her notebook. Ooh, show me more.
Yeah, I'm there
you want to warm up, proper areas and avoid the kidneys.
Avoid the kidneys.
All that good stuff.
Everyone, you heard it here on Romance at a Glance. You need to avoid your kidneys.
The kidneys.
The kidneys are very important organs. You need to avoid them.
Well, the cool thing too is now that because of Corona, it's making classes way more accessible to anyone all over the world. So I've taken classes and probably anything you can think about, whether it's from needle play to knife play to with all the plays, right? And I have a few friends that they're like, they know that they're kinky, but they haven't gotten into the community, right? And they don't know how to, and they don't know how to start, and they're also not in big cities. And so I've been able to send them links to the online versions of these classes, you know, and all of them are finding their little kinky selves.
It's like, yay. You know, I use the hashtag long live kink, you know, because it's out there, and, you know, no kink shaming as long as they're adults and they're all consenting. Have at it, you know. And have fun.
Don't yuck anyone else's yum.
No. Exactly.
Not for. I always Shawnee says that, and I always say, it's Amy Poehler had this in her book. Not for you, or not for me. Good for you. If you're happy, that's fine for you. It's not for me.
Or if you like it, I love it.
If you like it, I love it. If you like it, I love it.
Yeah, I've gotten some, you know, reviews on the trilogy and the other books of how they were eye-opening and not necessarily for that reader, but they could appreciate the information. They could appreciate how well written it came across.
Yep.
And that was enough for them to keep reading.
I actually feel like Ribbons and O's would be a good one for people who don't know about kink, because the main female character doesn't know about it. And then she meets a dom, and he's like, are you in the community? You know, do you know about this? And she's like, tell me more.
Right.
Let me tell you how I want to know all of it. And like, not going to spoil the book, but their first time together, he's like, okay, I'm going to like spend this time with you, and we're just going to do little things so I can see what you like, what you're responding to. You give me a, like, what is it? Like 1 through 10 or 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Like if you like it or don't like it, so that he could see like what things were like arousing her, and what things she was like, she was like, meh.
Yeah, you do that again, I'm going to punch you back in the face.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, that is like an erotic dream of someone just like all their energy focused on you. Like, that's the dream right there. It's just someone trying to figure you out, you know? Yeah, me and Shawnee and Rachel are aggressively nodding at me right now on video. Okay, Rachel, before we go, I do have a few questions about the moolah, the money, because we always like talking about the dollar bills. So because you are self-publishing all of the novellas, are you like, tell us a little bit about the Kindle Unlimited versus charging a price for the books, because your books are not in Kindle Unlimited, at least not currently, the ones that we were reading.
The BDSM books are not in Kindle Unlimited. Brooklyn, Ribbons, and the trilogy, and Wanted, because it's my most recent one, and Wanted is the one I've actually dumped the most money into. I went ahead and bought the 10-pack of ISBN, you know. And Wanted is the first one that has my ISBN on it. Nice. The others, you know, I just used, because back then when I did those, we still had Create Space.
Yeah.
And, you know, just got those issued to it. The other books, Unchained Melody, Firelust, The Food Critic, Slots. My alter ego, I'm a Sinner, where I did a kind of a satiric Cocky Gate novella. Those are all in Kindle Unlimited or 99 cents. And it's just because they are so short. They've been out there so long at this point. It's easier just to put them over in KDP. I very rarely see KDP page reads. I don't know why. They're in Kindle Unlimited, and it might be at this point that they're so old. Everybody who wants to read them has read them. You know, but the BDSM ones, and like I said, Wanted they're more my babies. And so I want them on a wider platform. I have to, you know, to get to ACX, they have to be on Amazon because the two are linked, which is how I got into doing ACX. I've been fortunate enough at this point that the narrators have done royalty share with me. So I've not had to come up and, you know, front the money, but I've I try to do my best to push any books that they've worked on. With Tor and Jess especially, each time we've done one, I've sent them a set of the actual print books, one for them to keep themselves, but then they'll sign a couple and send back to me. That as the audiobooks come out, we'll do giveaways that have, the book signed by all of us. Mm-hmm. Brooklyn and Blues, Ari over in, I think she's Oral Fixation, maybe. She really freaked out on Brooklyn Blues. She absolutely loved it when it first came out. And she'd thrown something out about how she just kind of wanted to get a little pair of striped stockings and curl up with this book and read. And because she had just been so enthusiastic, I think she had a lot to do with us getting the bestseller on it, because she couldn't stop talking about it, for a couple of weeks there after she'd read it, listened to it. So I went out of my way to go find a pair of stockings, and I got the book together and everything, and I signed them and I sent them over to Tor and Jess, and they signed them. And, we surprised her by sending her this packet. So she's got a pair of thigh highs that have our signatures on them. And she actually put them on and, took a picture and was, shared it. Was all excited about it. And I think I've just completely got off topic. I forgot where I was going.
No, that was the topic. That's the topic. This is great. What is there a dollar amount, like, because you still take editing jobs, is there like a dollar amount where you'd be like, oh, I'm going to just full-time write so that you can publish more books? Or do you think you'll always edit?
The books definitely need to sell more. I'm not writing books for the money. I mean, I think like right now, I think my KDP is sitting at about $5 for the month in royalties. It's really, I make more from the audiobooks, but even that has started tapering off. The writing is not where the money is at for me. I don't sell that many books. The editing is where I get the money that I put back into like shipping these things and doing the gifts and doing the giveaways and whatnot, because that's kind of the deal. My husband doesn't push me to actually go back to a desk job, but I'm not allowed to spend the house finances on the frivolous book world stuff. So when I'm ordering swag, when I'm going to book signings, my table fees and all the goodies and stuff that I put out on the table, all that has to come out of what I've made from the books and or editing. And then we call it even. And I get to keep doing this.
Hey, that's it, man. That's because you love to do it. That's the same with us. We, our podcast is new. We're not earning enough money to replace full salaries yet, but we love it. And so what money we earn from other jobs and consulting and writing that we do, we, put into our podcast. Yeah. Rachel, why is it that you chose to use your initial?
That one I'm not really sure, other than I knew I wanted my name on it. I didn't know if it was going to be one book or, I'm now up to, with Wanted, it's 13 books. Which is more than I thought initially going into this that I would ever publish. But on the off chance that I only ever did one book, I wanted my name on it. And, so it's my name.
Yeah.
The initial thing, I guess, was kind of to differentiate it a little bit, to kind of make it more professional.
Yeah.
and leave it vague. I mean, obviously I don't hide that I'm female or whatever, but there are some people that'll pick up a book and they might rather have a male author for whatever reason, or maybe they would just rather not know if it's a male or a female. And that initial setup leaves it vague.
It's funny. There are quite a bit of men who are writing romance. So when I was narrating through ACX, there were quite a bit of like manuscripts that were written by men that were coming through with female names. And I was like, oh, you got so tricky. But to me, you can always tell a story written by a dude versus written by a woman. Like there was like anybody reading it could go like, I feel like a dude. This is from a male gaze. Like this right here is clearly from a male gaze. But I was actually kind of shocked at how many guys probably feel like they can't be in the romance community because they're men.
Yeah, they're like, it'd be one thing if they were writing, sci-fi or motorcycle or, that action, thriller, mystery, horror, whatever. But yeah, to start penning romance is like, oh, dude. I have one of the things I have to do with my authors is when they're trying to write the male, they're writing their male point of views, and they'll have the guy walk into the room and look over, and they see her, in the A-line chiffon dress with the bouffant, and I'm like, okay, let's back it up. Is your guy really going to know the style of the dress, the haircut, the designer? I mean, let's be a little bit realistic here. You're, most guys are going to just look over and see her
like
in
the hottie in the green dress,
right? With the wavy long brown hair or whatever. They're not going to be detailing the brand of shoes and what type of jewelry she's wearing and all that stuff. He's just going to appreciate that she looks good,
right?
Same thing with furniture. They'll come in and start describing, and it's like, okay, unless your character is a designer or a historian or something that specializes in this, I really don't think they're going to come in and start discussing what the shades of the eggplant or
like I tell Bridget all the time, right? I don't care what an author describes anything as. My brain will make the world, and it could look nothing like what you described. So like I like we were talking about, I think during J.R. Ward's book, and she describes this mansion and how the staircases are and all this. I heard mansion, there's some staircases. Boom.
And that real long cement thing that leads underground, to the outside on the other side of the gate.
Yeah.
Like cool. Cement hallway?
Cool.
Got it.
Cement hallway. Boom, boom. And you create it. I don't need the author to give me too much description ever. You know what I mean? Oh, are we in a forest? Great. Forest, mate. Like when they're sitting there like in the mushrooms and I'm like, come on, this is getting me to the story. I got you. I'm my way ahead of you. Okay. I made this forest.
Another thing I tell my authors, give your readers credit. The readers are not stupid. They do not need every last thing spelled out.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Because I always say, like, assume I'm not, like, I'm intelligent. Like, yes. There's books we've read where I'm like, I think this author thinks I'm stupid. Like, that's how I feel reading it. And then it turns me off to a book because I'm like, it just, you don't have to spell everything out. Everything doesn't have to be explained. You can infer things and people can make the leap and go with you on that. And
if they can't, maybe they'll actually go look something up and learn something new if they don't quite get it.
Yeah.
It's a balance, but it's like,
throw in a glossary. Who cares?
So, Rachel, one of the things we've been asking our authors is about their own happily ever after, and if they have any advice on sustaining, either meeting or sustaining, since you have been with your husband for a long time, a long relationship.
Communication. And understand, he's walking through the room right now.
Hello,
so he just heard that question. Communication is the big one. You have to realize that you're both going to have bad days. Hopefully you don't have your bad days on the same day. It's a give and take. I met him in advanced algebra in high school. He's 6'4". Was 6'4" at that time. So imagine a 6'4" person in those little high school desks. I had come in second semester, so the classroom was pretty much already filled up. And when I got there the first day of the second semester, was just looking for an open seat. I happened to be in front of him. And he didn't fit. And anytime he tried to move or whatever, his knee would actually hit my butt. And I'd hear this, oh, sorry. And he kept to himself and he doodled all the time. And the guy that sat next to him, for whatever reason, really wanted to date me. I was a shy person. I didn't date. I was like, okay. And I'd go, well, maybe, let me see, let me check my calendar. And I always was able to come up with an excuse to say no. Finally got to the point where I was like, screw it. Okay, yes, we'll go to lunch. We'll go do lunch. That day, I was one of the advisors for the Naturalist Club, and our meeting ran right before we went to lunch. Our meeting ran a little bit long, and I needed to talk to a couple of people. And so I was like five minutes or so late getting out of the room. And old dude that I was supposed to have met, I heard his little moped thing zipping off. He got mad, figured I had stood him up, and he zipped off. And I was like, well, shit, I was like, I finally had said yes. And I knew I still had to face this guy because advanced algebra was the last period of the day. And so I dreaded the rest of the day, working up to the last period. Got in there and I, shuffled over to my seat and I sat down, and, Mike promptly bumped me with his knee again. Oh, sorry. I was like, that's okay. And then I'm sitting here, and in comes the guy that, I was supposed to have had lunch with, and you could see it on his face. He was livid. And he comes over, and he slams his book on the desk, and he's like, if you didn't want to go to lunch with me, you could have just said no. And I'm like, I don't do good with raised voices, and I'm an empathetic type person. I don't like making people feel bad. I want everybody around me happy. It's real hard for me to say no. And I'm like, I was sitting there and I didn't know what to say. I'm like, I'm sorry. And Mike speaks up with, does she have to draw you a picture? And I looked over. It's the first time I really looked at him. And yeah, from that point on, it shifted. Andy, the other guy, just completely let it go at that point. Never asked me again. It's like that one phrase shut him up. He quit trying to ask me out. But my attention at that point had focused on Mike. And I spent like the next month trying to figure out his schedule. Anybody, all my friends, I figured out who had classes with him when, so that I knew where he would be when on the campus. Mm-hmm. And when I was finally ready to make my move, because he had said something at one point about, he thought he was a dork and nobody wanted anything to do with him. He's like, you wouldn't even talk to me in public. You only talk to me, here in class because I'm, you're right here next to me and you have to. And I actually have a whip started. Eventually, I'm going to write this whole story out as a YA romance thing.
Oh my God. That's great.
But yeah, it took like a month using my friends to plot out where he was when. My best friend is the one that drove to school in the morning. She picked us up and we're like, okay, we've got to get there early today because they walk between these buildings between this time and this time. And we plotted it out to get there. And sure enough, as we're coming across the campus, I see him and his best friend, like clockwork, going where they're supposed to be going. And Debbie, my friend, kind of stood back and I ran up to him and went, hi, I'm saying hi to you, bye. And I remember seeing him just kind of left standing there with this look on his face, like, what just happened? And I ran back to Debbie, beet red, and again, didn't see him again till the end of the day. And he was like, it was nice seeing you this morning. I have no idea what you said to me. And I was like, I said, it was, hi, I'm saying hi to you in public. Bye. And we just, he was like, oh, okay. And we just, it kind of went from there.
Yeah.
We were married. We were married in 94. So we are at 26 years.
Wow.
Of marriage.
Oh my goodness.
We've been together since we were 16.
Wow.
Holy cow. First of all, that's an amazing story. Second of all, you both are kinky.
Who was the first one to be like, so I'm thinking about this thing.
Who brought out the flogger first?
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Who gifted who something
that
for
was
Christmas?
Probably me. No, I get I think it was me. As I got to the point where I started writing the stuff and becoming more aware of it and realizing we've talked about it and whatnot. And as we've looked back on things in our relationship, back on things in our, childhood and our upbringing, it's like, oh, well, the clues were there, weren't they? Like when we pulled a belt out and played with a belt, and, little things that we did that we thought we were just being a little more creative, not even realizing at the time, because we were, late teens, that that's where we were headed.
Yeah.
There's an excellent movie. It's Professor Marsden and the Wonder Women.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I think is the name of it. About it's the kind of it's where Wonder Woman came from, but there's a whole lot of BDSM kink in that story. Mm-hmm. His yeah. It's a really good movie. You need to go watch it if you haven't.
Oh, I'm going to watch it. It's I just wrote it down.
It's very eye-opening when you, again, it's just one of those. Oh my God, yeah, that was kind of all right there in front of us the whole time. But unless you're thinking that way,
or you have the education too, because like if you it's not like you were probably in school learning that was even existed. You know what I mean? I'm not sure where you grew up, but maybe they weren't even telling you that you should be on birth control or use condoms or it's not like the American education system is really giving people doing teenagers and young people a service of saying hey, there's a lot of different ways to have sex and a lot of different ways to do these things, and a lot of different ways to feel good. And
I learned from romance novels, and that just wasn't a good thing.
That's a slippery.
My parents got divorced when I was 3. I was raised between my father as a younger child. He committed suicide when I was 12, so my mother took over after that point, and so then it was just single mom and me, because I don't have any siblings. It was just the two of us, and she didn't really. I mean, she promoted open conversations and stuff, but she didn't really encourage them. It was more if you have questions, ask. It wasn't let's sit down and talk, whatever. His mom would be at the grocery store with him, or he'd be at the grocery store with his mom, and she'd point at the things and go, oh, by the way, do I need to get you some condoms? And she'd just throw it out there, and he'd be like, mom, no, I'll take care of that myself, thanks. No, it was a little more open on his side than it was on my side. So it's part of why I think I've been more shy about it. We have our 3 children. We've got 2 boys and a girl. We've been very open with them. If you have questions, if you have concerns, let's talk. We openly talk about things as they come up on the TV or whatever. This day and age, there's just so much more that's out there. It's put out there whether you want your kids exposed to it or not, they're probably going to get exposed to it. Social media, TV, it's out there, and you need to be prepared to have those conversations with your kids. I don't remember if it's in Ribbons and O's or if it's in Brooklyn, but at one point I have them, actually say that if you can't openly talk about it, then you're not ready to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to be able to have that conversation. Communication.
Yes. And I find that once I learn micro communication, that term, and then what that means in terms of communicating, how to communicate with each other, that was a game changer in terms of communication for me. And having trigger words for things that mean a whole phrase. So you can say one word ducky, and ducky means hey, I can't talk right now. I'm overloaded. I don't want to, or hand signals, things like that. Those have been a game changer, especially for me, because I have sensory processing things that are difficult. So sometimes I just can't hear words, and I think that micro communication stuff is good. But I always look back to this moment when I was I don't know, I think I was 13, and I was in my own head going one day I'm going to have a partner. I'm going to tie him to the bed. I'm doing this whole thing. And I had no reference for this. I'd never seen someone tied to a bed. I'd never seen whatever. This was just in my whole mind. I would create these scenarios and whatever. And I look back and I'm like, man, you was a kinky ass little kid, man. Little freak ass. And it was like you said, it's always there. And And I got to a point just where I kept saying, like, if I don't express this way, I feel like I'm going to explode. Like,
yeah.
Or suffocate. Like, I just felt that way, So it is like, I feel like a driving need.
It's a born this way thing. If it's in you, it's in you. And one way or another, it's going to come out. You'll find a way. You'll find the person or your people or,
or your books by R.E.Hargrave. And you can enjoy that. Rachel, thank you so much for being here with us. This has been a real delight.
Yes.
I'm excited.
How do you feel after? Do you feel a little more relaxed? You were nervous before. Now, what's the after feeling?
I'm very sweaty right now. But I've laughed a lot. I feel, I've told you guys, you've got secrets out of me that I'm not made on air. So yeah, I'm tickled to hear how this actually all comes together. And I can't say thank you enough. When you guys reached out and said that you wanted to do this, like I said, for Ribbons and O's out of all the stuff that I'm known for, because Ribbons and O's really doesn't have that much attention on it. Like I said, it's got a few reviews, but
it's a middle child. We get it.
It's a middle child. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get some more reviews.
Awesome. It was lovely having you.
It was lovely being here. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to our channel to get new episodes, clips, and more.
And click here to watch our previous reviews and author interviews.